Hi, everyone, and welcome. I'm Kim Kroeker of Stampin' with Kim Arlene, and I am from the suburbs of Vancouver on the west coast of Canada, and I am an independent Stampin' Up demonstrator. Today, I want to show you a cool watercolor wash technique, a background technique. Now, this is a card that I made quite some time ago, and at the time I had quite a few people asking for videos for the technique. And at that time I didn't do videos. So I thought maybe that I should finally get around to doing that. So here is the video for the technique and for the card. And I'm using the Mountain Air stamp set. This is a Stampin' Up stamp set that is soon to be retiring. If it's something that you like, you will want to get it quickly. Once our new catalog comes out on May the 2nd, 2023, this will no longer be available. All right. Okay, let's get started. For the watercolor wash background, I'm going to use 3 re-inkers, the Stampin' Up re-inkers. And the 3 colors that I have are Daffodil Delight, Balmy Blue, and Bermuda Bay. Now, Bermuda Bay, unfortunately, is a color that is being retired. It's one of my favorites. I'm really sad about that. If it is a color that you like and don't have, you may want to order it quickly. I am going to be using a piece of shimmery white cardstock. This is another of my favorite products. It's being retired. I think this one's even gone. It's got a little bit of a shimmer to it. It's got a really good weight to it. You could also use basic white, and you could also use the fluid watercolor paper. Probably the second would be better with that. Okay, I have in a little paint palette put 2 drops of the Daffodil Delight, 3 of the Balmy Blue, and 3 of the Bermuda Bay. I'm going to take a Stampin' Spritzer with water, and I'm going to spray the back of the paper a few times, just 2 or 3. That helps the paper to stop curling quite so much. Now, you want the paper to be quite wet so that when you add the ink to it, it is going to just flow a little bit. I'm just going to put, that's not enough. Put a little bit of yellow in here. Okay, and then I'm going to clean out my aqua painter, water painter. This is the Stampin' Up water painter, and I'm going to add some Balmy Blue. You see I've got quite a bit of water on there now, which is what I do want. I'm going to add a little bit of Bermuda Bay, a little bit more water. Try and aim it at the paper, might work a little bit better. When you let this dry, you do want to try and just let it dry on its own. You want to make sure that you don't leave any puddles in it, so you'll work over paper towel and then the extra just sort of, if it's too puddly, you're going to want to just set it at the edge there and try and get rid of the puddles. This is a great background to use for all sorts of things. You will never get the same results. You can use all sorts of colors. You want to be careful that you are not going to get colors that are going to be muddy mixing together. So you're going to want to stick with warm colors or cool colors. And I'm just going to add a little bit more yellow there. And I'm kind of hoping for a bit of a sun looking kind of thing, but we'll see how that works out. All right, so then the other thing you can do is you can use a heat tool to dry. Again, you want to make sure you don't have any puddles of color on there. So I'm just going to actually spritz this a tiny bit, and we'll let that dry, and we'll do the next step. Okay, so we have let this dry overnight. I've also put it under a couple of books overnight as well, just to flatten it out. Again, as I mentioned, you could dry it with a heat tool, but it's actually better just to leave it dry on its own. We're going to use a Stamparatus, and the reason I'm doing that is we're going to do some embossing over top of the mountain image. So I've got the mountain image on my Stamparatus, I'm going to put my shimmery white piece in here, and I'm just going to make sure I'm not going to hit the magnet. I think I'm going to use a second magnet just because the paper's curled a little bit. I'm going to flatten that out as much as I can. I'll just double check that's not going to work. That's kind of what I thought. Let's try that there. No, that's not going to work at all. I might just use one magnet. Let's see. Okay, that should work. Now, because this is a photopolymer stamp, I am going to use the mat, the foam mat that comes with your Stamparatus. You need that just to get a little bit more contact with the stamp. And I am going to use gray granite ink for the mountains. Now, what I am going to do here is I've got the left-hand part of the mountain range over the right-hand part of the shimmery white cardstock, and you'll see that a little bit better after I've inked it up. So I'm going to ink mostly just the left side of this mountain range. I'm going to press it down, and I'm going to give that a little bit more ink and move my magnet a little bit out of the way. One more time. It's funny, you practice this and it works very well. And then you go to tape it and things don't work quite as well as you wanted them to do. All right, so that I think is good. I'm just going to add a little bit more. I think I missed some ink over there. Okay, and I'll tuck that away. And also my Stamparatus away. And we'll go back and use the Stamparatus again with the white embossing. What I'm going to use now is this tree image ink. It's tree and water. And I'll just show you here. It's the detailed stamp here. And I'm going to ink that up with Mossy Meadow. I am going to use my foam mat again because I'm using a photopolymer stamp and it will give it better contact. And I'm going to take the old olive, and I'll just change this up so you can see. I'm going to take the old olive and stamp it across the top of this where the trees are. And then I'm going to take my Pacific Point Stampin' Write marker, and I'm going to use the brush end of this one and color it along the water. It's really awesome that you can use your Stampin' Write markers directly with your stamping. And if you don't have lots of ink colors, that's a great way to do this. Now I'm going to put this right across, and I'm just going to line it up with sort of the bottom of the mountain range. And I'm going to press this down and hope that I do better than I did with the other one. Oh, I missed that one little spot again. All right, let me just line this up one more time. Hopefully my hair is not in the way. All right, that should be good. And I'm going to take my blender pen, and I just want to run this along the water just to sort of spread that color throughout the water a little bit more than just the way it is. This is an awesome tool to have. Okay. Put the lid on that and tuck that away. And let's see. Next, we are going to take this back to the Stamparatus. No, we're going to do trees first. Sorry about that. I'm going to use the Mossy Meadow, and we're going to use the two detailed tree images in your stamp set, the double tree and the single tree. The one with the details, not the reverse of it, which is sort of more a background. I'm going to start out with the double tree. And as I go here, I'm going to add some trees to the left and to the bottom and a few to the right as well. And I am going to be stamping the large trees in Mossy Meadow. So I'm going to put one just up at the top, and then I'm going to do a lower image that is stamped off. I want to make sure that I'm going lower when I do the second one, because if I don't, I'll get ink left. It'll look funny because some of the ink won't be in the same place as it was before. And I want to just go around to the bottom of my card. And I'm going to get on, I just will put another couple of these here. And a bit lower. And then I'll add in my taller, not my taller, my single tree. The second generation stamping that I'm doing, which is that's the first generation, and then second generation, that's just sort of to show some trees in the distance. And I want to just cover this bottom part that is a little bit white. Okay. All right. And next I am going to stamp the birds, tiny little birds that come with this stamp set right here. And I'm going to stamp those in basic gray. Now, as I mentioned, this stamp set is retiring soon. It's really a good one for scenery, and I am going to miss it. Okay, and we're going to take our little birds, and I think I'm just going to put them over there. All right. Once the birds are done, we're going to take the mountains, and I'm actually just going to use a heat tool for a little bit here to make sure that all of my ink is dry, because we're going to be doing some embossing. I apologize for the noise here. Now, the reason I want to do that is that if the ink is a little bit wet, when I add my embossing powder, it's going to stick to the damp part, which I do not want to have happen. And just to hopefully make sure that we don't have that happen at all, I'm going to take my embossing buddy and run it over. Yeah, see, some of that is a little bit damp. Okay. And I'll bring back my Stamparatus. And I guess it would be a good idea if I cleaned that stamp off. And I'm going to add some Versamark. Now, the Versamark is going to be for the snow on the top of the mountain, so I don't want to ink the whole thing. I pretty much want to just get the tops of the mountains. And then I'm going to put my card back in. And then press it down, making sure the magnet's out of the way. And that will go directly over top of my previously stamped image. Not sure that I can see that. I'm going to do it one more time. Just to make sure. This is a clear ink. It's a little bit sticky, and then the white embossing powder will stick onto that. Take this out of the way now. And I'm going to take that full mat out because I am going to use it with the sentiment, which is not a photopolymer. So take our white embossing powder. And I've got a spoon, and what I want to do is I'm just going to try and selectively add the embossing powder to the mountaintops. It wasn't very selective, was it? Okay, that worked actually not too badly. And I'm going to use a brush because I guess I had a little bit of extra embossing powder at the top, but I don't want it to go straight across and look really weird, so I'm going to take a little bit of it off. If that's okay. And use my heat tool to set that. And as soon as I see that embossing powder melting and getting shiny, I know that it has embossed. And the next thing I want to do is the sentiment, which I'm going to pull my Stamparatus back. And I've got this already set up on the plate. Sorry about that. And I'm going to do this with Memento. Works better if you put the card in it. Now the reason that I have this in my Stamparatus is I want to make sure that after doing all of that work with the background and all the stamping, that my sentiment is perfect. You don't have to do this, especially if you're a very confident stamper, but I like to do that. All right, next thing we're going to do is we're going to take some twine, and I've got 30 inches of twine, and I am going to wrap that around the card twice. I want a bow probably over in maybe the left-hand side, so I'm going to start it there, wrap it around my card twice, and slide that a little bit more so I've got it fairly even. And I'm going to take reverse tweezers and just put that in where I want my knot to be. And I'll tie a knot once and then do a bow. I don't know why, but my bows always work better if they're upside down. Make sure that's tight enough. There we go. And I want this to be a little bit wider apart, so I'm going to move them about a 1/4 inch apart. That bow is a little bit too big. All right, next thing is to put it on a mat, and I'm going to use a basic black cardstock mat that is 5 1/4 by 4 inches. So we'll just glue that on. I do use seal a lot, but when there's something that needs to be put on so that everything is even, then I tend to use the liquid glue to have a little bit of room to move it into place. Okay, and I've got just a little bit extra glue there that I'll get rid of. And then this is going to go on a standard Bermuda Bay cardstock base. Bermuda Bay is also a color that is being retired. It's a favorite of mine, so I'm sad about that. A little bit heavy on the glue. And then we're going to, and the Bermuda Bay cardstock base is 5.5 by 8.5, and it's scored at 4 1/4. Making sure that it's the right way. That bow needs to be trimmed. Stampin' Up doesn't sell glue erasers anymore, which I've found are really great at getting rid of the extra glue when you're not quite as tidy as you should be. Anyway, there's the card, and this is a Mountain Air stamp set, and it's a watercolor wash background and snow on the mountains. And I'm just going to trim this bow a little bit. And there we go. Okay, this is my first YouTube video. I'm sure that there are lots of things that I can do better, and I'll be working on that. However, if you'd like to see some really great cards and some interesting techniques, I hope that you'll subscribe. Okay, so I hope all of you liked that card and that technique. I did mention to you that you get a different result every time. And this is 2 examples of using exactly the same technique, the same colors, and coming out quite different. The one on the left is the one that he did quite a while ago, and it is much more subtle. This one is much brighter, and it kind of just depends how much water you use and how much ink that you add with a water painter or with a paintbrush. So play around with that. And in the meantime, I do hope that you will subscribe to my YouTube channel and see some other cards in the future. I'm going to be doing some ocean themed cards with blending brushes, and hopefully you'll join me. Okay, thank you so much. Hope to see you again.